freelance trenches. So moderated by Zach Goodwin, who you might be familiar with by now. So Zach, take it away.
Hello. Hi, I am Zach Goodwin, and I'm creative director at iStrategy Labs. For those of you who are in our last session, we just hung out for an hour. For those of you who are new, iStrategy Labs is a digital agency based in DuPont. We're 25 large now, and we co-produce DCWEEK, which is how I snuck into this panel. So we're going to be talking about the challenges, opportunities, and overall harrowing life that is freelancing. I am going to be joined by the incredible Daniel Dawley, who is an After Effects animator and Cinema 4D specialist. He does motion graphics of all kind. The Anne Likes Red and Kerns. We have Carolyn Sewell, who I've worked with in other capacities for a gazillion years and who is amazing, a graphic designer, who also does a lot of hand lettering and poster work, signage, all sorts of stuff. And Jill, who you also just met from our last panel. Why are you shaking your head? Oh. And Jill, who does signage, experience, and what other word would we use? Large format. So before we get started, can we see a show of hands for those people in the room who are freelancers? Yeah. For those of you who are not freelancers, why are you here? I'm serious. Okay. How many in here are designers? Does that look like 55%? How many in here are developers? So really what we should be doing is we'll just take the rest of this time and have a networking event. You guys can hang out, and then you can start a business tomorrow. Okay, so I am presently not a freelancer, though did for 3 years before going full-time to work as creative director at iStrategy Labs. So I'm going to hand it off to these folks with the question of how did you decide to become a freelancer? And I'm going to look to Dan first, and then we can head down the line.
Okay. Hello, everybody. No, the question was what motivated you to become a freelancer. So that was more of a circumstantial thing because there wasn't a whole lot of animation to be had in the DC area. So where I was with an agency, and that agency didn't want to do too much animation. And really, I just saw more of an opportunity to do it more than anything. And I love animating. That's what I'm passionate about. So I figured I would take the plunge and just go full-time doing that. And then ran into fine folk here, Zach Goodwin. So
I feel like Caroline, you've done both sides of the aisle, so to speak. So talk about your decision to go from agency to freelance.
Okay. Hello. Okay. Basically, I worked at a bunch of agencies all over DC. A total slut. I moved around a lot, and I never could find out where I was supposed to be. And then right was I'd gotten into Blattner Bruner, was feeling pretty comfortable. They pulled me in. And they were like, "We have some bad news. We're gonna have to let someone go." And I was like, "No. Who is it? This is awful."
That is such bad news.
I was like, "This is terrible. What are we going to do?" And they're like, "Carolyn, it's you." I was like, "What? You can't." But they did. I cried. But then I went home and I drank a bunch of wine and I just decided, was I going to keep trying to get more agency jobs and keep sledding around, or was I going to go on my own? So I decided to hang up my slut clothes and be a solopreneur. And it was sort of a forced decision, but it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Every year I think about writing them a thank you note and saying, "Dear Blattner Bruner, thank you for laying me off."
Didn't they also go out of business?
They're not doing well.
Perfect.
I think it's because I'm gone, but whatever.
Anne, do you want to take a crack at your
Sure.
motivation?
Well, I've been a designer and art director in the area for over 20 years, and I've worked at I worked at Hex well before they went out of business, and I worked at a PR firm, and I worked at a design firm that's quite large now, but when I was there, it was not large. And then I worked at a small firm, and finally, I just decided it was time for me to go out on my own. So the honest answer is I was mad as hell and I wasn't going to take it anymore. But the diplomatic answer is, oh, I think it's just time for me to go out on my own. Because, the adage, don't burn your bridges, still holds water, as long as we're going to use some water metaphors. So I had, I guess, about 15 years experience. I highly recommend people work for other people before going out on their own, because you learn how things are done. You learn how, to construct your work, whether it's print work or digital work. You learn professional practices. You learn what not to do. So, you get great experience working for other people in other situations, small firms, large firms, et cetera. So I've been on my own for about 6.5 years. And at first, I was nervous, and I accepted a position as an adjunct professor, assistant professor of design at a local university. And I did that part-time for a while, and it was very hard to juggle schedules. But, it was one of the things that I could do to, help bring in money. And so at the end of 2010, I decided to hang up that part of it and make a complete 100% going full-time on my own. And so, it's been, 100% on my own, but no more teaching, so.
Gotcha. Cool. I was curious, between the four of you, what is the range of the number of projects you take at a time? When I freelanced, I typically had many projects going because I wasn't making a ton of money from each project. Where are you guys in your spectrum of taking one big one that lasts you a year, or 5 small ones simultaneously that, let's start there. Who wants it?
I have a bad complex where I just say yes to everything, and then it gets me in trouble. But luckily, I know a lot of people in the area where if I get too much stuff, I never really see that as a bad thing. If I have to work a little late or work on the weekends, I'm making money and I can survive, and maybe I can even hire somebody else. So a lot of times I'll just say yes, and then I'll figure out how to do it. If it means working late, or if it means bringing someone in on just a job and hiring them as a contractor and subbing out to them. Maybe that's a bad strategy, but a lot of my projects are different than yours, perhaps, because mine last several years, so I can go a long time on a project. So it's a little different.
I agree. I do the same thing. I say yes to anything that's a fit for my business, and I charge enough so that if I have to hire people, it's not a problem. So I also like to have a network of designers, developers, people that I can count on if I need to subcontract. And I say no to the crap work that's too small or that's not a fit, or the quote-unquote $50 logos. And you can extrapolate that to the $500 logos. I don't do $500 logos. I think they're a waste of time. And I don't do design for decoration. So the jobs that are a fit, that are strategic, that are, usually I develop lasting long-term relationships with my clients. Sometimes that's not to sound cocky. I'll sometimes work with my clients on budgets. It's all about communication. But I rarely say, no, I can't do that. And if it means that I subcontract with a colleague who I trust to, work with me on a project, great. I'm spreading jobs around for other people.
I'm totally different in that, and I'm sandwiched between two very professional people that know what they're talking about. I take on the projects that are exciting and pretty and get me all tingly, even if they don't pay. So I get myself in trouble because I get so excited at the idea of doing something different or doing something that pushes me, and then I just somehow live off of popcorn and make it work because I I have a totally different mentality of I want my book to keep growing, but my pocketbook isn't necessarily growing at the same rate. So yeah, I'm like, learn from me and be better than that. So
Maybe, so I definitely remember like in the very, very beginning. So let's talk about making the transition away from having a job that pays you regularly to like, how do you quit your job, and where was that transition point? Did you go where you were doing freelance work on the side while still being employed, or did you jump out? I did the jump out, which was, luckily I was young enough that I needed to make like $800 a month, so it didn't really matter. I could find that. But yeah, how does that transition between gainful full employment to trying to do it on your own happen?
I'll start with that. It's tough. When I actually did it, I mean, I never really thought that I wanted to work for myself until I got to that point. It was a relatively short amount of time. And I had a mortgage, and I had bills, and I had debts. One of my big advice that I would offer is if you can lower or eliminate any outstanding debt, certainly before you go self-employed, do it. I didn't, and it's hard to manage that. So that's, one of my big advices that unfortunately I didn't follow. But I did prepare. Once I decided that I was going to go out on my own, I prepared. I took out a home equity line of credit so that I had cash available, which I used to make some capital purchases and live on for the first couple months. And so that was good to have, better than not making your mortgage payment, certainly. And I scheduled some surgeries, a procedure that, it wasn't like life-threatening, but I knew that it was coming up, and I got that taken care of before I left my job because I wasn't quite sure how the whole health insurance and COBRA thing was going to work, and I didn't want to tip them off by asking, so how does that work, if somebody quits? And of course, once I did quit, I continued with the health insurance, but I paid 100% of what the cost was. So even though it was less than going into paying for health insurance on the individual market, it went from like $300 and something a month, which is what my contribution was, to like double that, and then it was even more once I had to pay for health insurance completely in the individual market. And I actually incorporated right from the beginning. And as soon as the health insurance kept going up and up, I hired my husband last year as an employee. So we have a 2-person company so that now in Maryland we can have group health insurance, because you can't have group health insurance with 1 employee. You have to have 2 employees. So all this stuff matters when you're self-employed. And if you're, because he's self-employed too. He doesn't have he's not employed by someone else. So when you're in a household that is just self-employed people, there's a lot to think about, and it can be really hard. So I forget what the original question was. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to think of, so we have a lot of people here who are currently not freelancing and looking to make that transition. Ostensibly, they have
Prepare.
a job right now. How
Prepare
do you get
as
out?
best you
and
can.
The best answer so far is prepare, especially financially.
Yeah.
I definitely went at least 7 months without any health insurance. I was like 22, but
Well,
don't get
I'm
laid
older.
off. It helps to not get laid off.
don't get.
Insurance right now as a single person.
That's a great question.
Say that again.
How much do you actually pay as a single person for health insurance while freelancing? What's your rough number?
Let's go across the table here, if you're comfortable.
I pay like $220, but there's a lot of. That's the thing is if you get a health insurance broker, they will save your life. Save mine. I'm paying like $100 less a month because he introduced me to a plan that, because I'm relatively healthy, I don't need a lot of care. I just pay when I go outside of I pay a lot when I go to the doctor, but I don't go to the doctor a lot. So you just have to pick what's best for you.
I think mine's $250, $230. And a word to the wise of the women: if you are on your own and you think you're going to have kids, don't. Until you have to add on a maternity clause and pay into that for 10 months before you can even think about having a baby. So no one tells you that. And then they're like, oh, guess what? You cannot have children right now. So just a little
Interesting.
word to the women here.
The health insurance broker might tell you that.
They might tell you that too.
What are your ages? Because that matters, if you care to share. Sorry.
I'm going to be 30 in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, I'm 33.
Okay, so I'm 43. I'm married, and my husband has a son. So we have three people on our plan. My husband is 3 years older than me. No, 4 years older than me. Sorry. So it's based on his age. So we pay per month for an HMO plan in Maryland $1,053 per month.
Oh, my goodness.
It's for an HMO. Every time we go, we pay a copay. And when we go to the hospital, it's like a $50, emergency room I think is $100. I mean, it's an HMO plan. The reason that I'm very keen on not being without health insurance, and we got a broker too, so that we could find out that we could have, a two-person plan, or group plan in Maryland, is because I have I get migraines, I have psoriasis, which is a condition that requires medication. So, everybody's situation is different. I long for the days when I was 30 years old and healthy and, and God forbid if you have asthma, even a slight case of asthma, if they ever write that down on a piece of paper and it's in your, thing, you're going to be turned down for, like long-term disability. You're going to have higher rates. You're not going to, it's a problem. Health insurance is a huge problem in this country. And the other thing is, if you go without it for a certain time, then trying to get it again is a real problem. So that's why I paid for the COBRA. That's why, we paid for the individual out the wazoo. We calculated that if we hadn't gone with the group, like me hiring him and going with the group, that it was going to go up to $17,000 a year for our health payments.
Wow.
So,
Okay, so an important takeaway.
Yeah.
Keep your insurance while you have it. Don't lose it, and don't get old. Okay, let's try to do a little more rapid fire.
Sorry.
Do you have an LLC of your own, Dan Dawley?
Yes, I do.
So you are Sewell TV LLC.
Sewell.tv LLC, but I didn't start with that.
You didn't. Okay.
I was a sole proprietor for a while, but the benefit of being a LLC is just that you can get all the cards with the LLC. You can get everything, straight in one place, bank accounts, and not have any transfer. If you're buying stuff for your business on your personal card, it gets hard to keep up with. So,
Yeah, I definitely started before I got that first check for $200 or whatever my first project was. Definitely, definitely had an LLC. And the big plus, in my view, was writing things off. Even when I was making very little money, I was writing off $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year based on just every living expense I had ever incurred, which I counted as a business expense. Let's
S Corp.
S Corp.
Short answer.
Well, I've already forgotten the question.
Do you have an LLC, S Corp, or nothing? Or are you just evading taxes?
I'm evading taxes. No, I'm the sole proprietor. I have a business, so I'm DBA, doing business as Carolyn Soul Design, because I didn't want my company name to not have my name, because I've spent most of my life making someone else's name sound good, and I wanted my own name to get better. So I'm still sole proprietor.
LLC.
LLC.
I'm so tiny.
What you were bringing up, I think, is an interesting point of the how do you brand yourself individually. So when I was freelancing as Crafty Mice Design, and my website had we are a team of ready and able designers to tackle, and it was just me in my bedroom. Dan is the CEO of Sewell TV, a single man shop. So what is the strategy, or what is everyone's individual strategy to creating either a business or a personal brand?
Well, Zach, I feel like you should answer from an agency perspective. When you're looking for clients or not clients, when you're looking for work to be done,
Yep.
and you see on this website, we
Yeah.
are
That's
a
the-
studio.
like
instead of
my-
I am.
We end up contracting with lots of subcontractors and web designers, developers, tons of animators. And I feel like there is always that moment where on the agency side where I'll go to someone's website and I'm trying to decide whether to contact them or not. And the main thing in my head is this actually one guy or is this actually 15 guys? Because if it's actually 15 guys and we're 25, that math is not going to add up. There's no way it's going to be profitable for both of us to do this. If it's one guy, he can do the job we need him to do and still make a great salary and still make it can be economically viable. So for me, from my current perspective, I tend to find it annoying building up this imaginary giant brand around one human. With that said, when I was freelancing, that's what I did. So, what do you guys think?
Anne?
Well, I think that speaks to knowing who your target audience is and targeting your own materials to your target audience and not trying to please all the people all the time. So, knowing that and defining that, I think, is very important. Right from the very beginning, I decided that my business name was going to be Anne Likes Red, and that, of course, I'm Anne. So I always tried to do it in first person, third person, and then transferring over to first person. Anne Likes Red. Yes, I do. And, putting it instead of a we. Now, recently I've started to do more of a we, not only because we are two people, my husband with his, we have a subsidiary company, Side B Creative Group, because my husband is an audio engineer and he does sound engineering and video production and that kind of thing. And then also when I subcontract with people, sometimes I'll do a proposal and I'll present Anne Likes Red as a team of experts where I'm the connector bringing in whoever I need for the team to do the project at hand when it's a bigger project. But it's always within context.
Well, we know what Carolyn thinks, but let's hear your reasoning for it.
Go. Yeah, it's just me, and I've always wanted it to be me. My husband had asked, don't you want to start a company and have employees? And I was, no. I would stop designing. I would be managing and dealing with salaries and grumpy people. And I prefer to just be me and my creative director, which is my cat Diva. And we get along great. And so I like being the small group. I have no desire to work with anyone ever because, if I feel like if I come across as we, which I never have, I feel like if you then expected me to be a team and then you met me, I feel like you'd be really disappointed. I'd be like, hey, it's just me. I'm a cat. So I went the honest route and was like, hey, it's just me. And I feel like a lot of people really just want to work with one person rather than this big, expensive conglomerate we.
Jill.
I was just going to agree with what Anne said. You have to know your audience. Like for my projects, I work in big teams. So I say we because people know they come to me for a signage package and I don't build anything. Mm-hmm. Don't put me near any hammers or nails, but I have a team that I work with to do that. So I say we.
What do you guys think? And this is going to get into the how do you get clients, but let's kind of so first we've hit branding. What do you guys do for your own personal web presence? And then let's go to how do you get clients? So web presence being websites, social media, all of the noise. Dan Dawley, rapid fire. Your website's looking really good, I think.
Oh, thanks. It's tough to say exactly, but I think that you have to put yourself in as many places as possible where you might get lucky. You need to be on Vimeo, you need to be on Flickr, you need to be everywhere just to at least have the possibility that somebody could stumble upon you. Now, that's really hard to do if you have a ton of projects, but at least maintain it, every couple of months and put yourself in the presence of luck. Also going to networking events, same thing. Just being in the presence of a possibility where you could get lucky and meet somebody who might know somebody who knows somebody. So.
Again, I think it depends on who your audience is. This audience is, probably going to look at my website and laugh. But I've actually, had clients compliment my website, which I'm, somewhat embarrassed by it because it's very simple. My portfolio is a PDF, which, is not appropriate for the design audience, but designers aren't my audience. So having said that, I've actually designed my website about 3 times, and it's just never gotten up because I'm not a web designer. I'm not a web developer. So that's on the agenda again, for this year. And I'll just say the shoemaker's children never have shoes.
So true. What do you think?
One thing I think is I agree with you that you want your name everywhere, and I try to be as consistent. So it's CarolynSewell.com. It's my Twitter handle is Carolyn Sewell. I want it to be the same on Instagram and everything. I don't want you to have to go to Kitty Monkeys and have to figure out that means it's me and whatever. I don't even know what a kitty monkey is. But whatever. But I feel like that's the first stop. But I found that just by uploading a lot of my sketches and random doodles on Flickr gets fantastic traffic. And a lot of people end up coming to my site because of that, which is great. And I found that's really, Flickr's been sort of the big portal that really kind of kicked things off. And then I maintain a presence on, Twitter and Instagram and things like that. And I update my website, every couple of months with more stuff. But yeah, that's it. But you got to have. If I can Google your name and it's not out there, then I don't even know how you're making
Dead
it in
to
this
me.
world. You're dead.
Jill?
I go to networking events. I drag myself there. In fact, one time I was like so ready to turn around and not go, and then I met someone who gave me who gave me a work, and then they gave my name to somebody else, and I'm doing work for them every year. So it pays off to go to networking events if you must go. Just prepare yourself to talk to the health insurance brokers while you're there. And then I would say, know your audience. I mean, I want to work with architects. So I have to know who all the architects are and figure out who the people are to connect with there, and just say to your friend, hey, I'm a dork and I'm on LinkedIn and I saw that you're connected with this person. I really want to talk to them. Would you mind doing an intro? And that's gotten me a lot of work. And then I don't have to go to the networking events. So if you can use technology, I mean, I have a website too, and it gives you some idea of what I do, but a lot of it is me reaching out to specific people. I know they have this project. I want to do that project. I'm going to call them.
Can we follow up to what she just said? I feel like that's a
You
really
bet.
good segue. Just talking about networking and getting beyond. Just because your stuff is online doesn't mean anything. You need to actually meet with people, whether you like it or not. I feel that word of mouth is stronger than anything. And
Totally.
I get almost all of my work is from referral. But a lot of the people that I want to work with are people who are running magazines and newspapers in town because I want to do illustrations for them. So I meet someone and I see that he's the creative director of XYZ magazine, and I'm running over and basically dry humping him and giving him business cards and doing everything I can and glitter and because you just never know when that's the buy him a beer, do anything, just he might remember me, maybe, or at least find some glitter in his pocket. So.
What do you think about networking, Dan?
Networking, it's important.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better.
I think though, have you actually ever worked with somebody that you've worked with or that you met online, like Flickr, like somebody that maybe you started following and then you built a relationship with you started doing work? Because that's kind of what happened with me with Vimeo.
Yeah, I actually got. I work with designed T-shirts for 2 different T-shirt companies who saw my work on Flickr, and they were like, "We want that as a shirt, and that as a shirt, and that as a shirt." And then now I'm doing temporary tattoos. I don't know if you heard of Tatley Swiss Smith, the blogger, does them. She's like, I want that as a tattoo. I want that one. So it's I've gotten quite a bit of fun projects from it.
Somewhere between networking and online presence, as someone who we're constantly trying to hire new and amazing designers, place we found or had the most luck and the place I go the most right now is Dribbble. Dribbble once you have a pro account, you're able to search by location. And as soon as I search on Dribble, I see 25 pieces of work, and they're just little thumbnails. But it is such an easy way to comb through really high quality stuff, and the caliber of designers who tend to be there is high. So I would recommend, if you're looking for work, freelance or otherwise, to be building your Dribble portfolio. Super easy. Does anyone here did you use a pre-made template to build your personal website, or did you spend 6 months, hand coding and slaving over the building of a website? Go.
I was on Creative Hot List forever. That's how I got all of my jobs right out of college.
Gotcha.
Used it forever. I'm even thinking it's now completely defunct. And then I use Cargo. Cargo has templated sites, which I love because I just needed to get my work up there and make it simple. I didn't want. I knew if I just had to build it from the ground up, I would never do it. I would just stress over it, and I really just need to get my work up there. So I love Cargo. Love, love, love. But I'm even thinking about starting a Behance.
I just feel dirty about it, but
I do feel
like
kind of dirty about
it's just
it.
gross.
But I kind of feel like it's sort of that necessary thing.
I always think they're like a shampoo company or something.
I know, but they're selling some shampoo or shelling some shampoo.
Yeah, I mean the thing is about it is that it does obviously it gets you into that like internal network of humans who you can stumble into.
I actually have something interesting to say about this. I have my Ann Likes Red site is, and the PDF that has my work on it is only work that has been done through my business or completely my work when I was freelancing. None of any of the work that I did through previous companies is associated with Ann Likes Red, because that's their work. That's not my work. Mm-hmm. So some of my, I have some nice work that I did when I was at my previous jobs. So the conundrum is, how do I still have that available for people to see? Maybe just even to be able to point them to that on a case-by-case basis. And so I'm an AIGA member, and AIGA has the Behance, interface, basically. It's a Behance site, but it's branded with AIGA. And so I have a Behance site, too, through AIGA, and that's where I can put, all kinds of work,
Gotcha.
And I can identify, what it was from, who it was for, and it's identified for Ann Kerns. There's still a bio that says, my business is Ann Likes Red, but then the work, it says this was done when I worked at XYZ.
Gotcha.
So that, legally, copyright, all that stuff is kosher, but I can still say, I designed this work.
Cool. So we have like 20 minutes left, and I feel like we have been talking. Let's go questions. Everybody gather questions. First up here, yes.
Yeah, I'm curious what everyone's take is on, two things actually. One, just in terms of maintaining accounting through the various solutions that you found, maybe the next question is. Two, I don't think anyone's a web designer other than Zach, what your take is on disclosure agreements.
Gotcha. Let's try to do rapid fire on accounting. I will say that when I was freelance, I used FreshBooks, and it was amazing. Super easy, super cheap.
Same, FreshBooks.
Do you guys also say if you have an accountant?
Yes.
I use QuickBooks because that's what my accountant uses, and my bookkeeper. And don't get behind.
Ditto. I use QuickBooks because my husband owns his own business. He also uses QuickBooks, and our accountant can just take our files and fix it. So it's just easier that way to keep it all in sync.
I don't do anything. I just, there was one point, it was 2 a.m. and I couldn't find where $200 was. And that's when I said, I'm hiring a bookkeeper tomorrow. And I hired the bookkeeper. I give him all my stuff. I don't do anything.
Nice.
And I have an accountant.
I totally agree on the hands-off strategy. I mean, like if you can afford it. Zvi.
So, actually, one of the reasons why I got out of the freelancing business was I was kind of concerned about like the long-term viability of it. So, I guess I ask you, what do you think you're going to be doing in 10 years?
rapid fire. Dan?
Yeah,
Carol?
yeah. I probably see myself with like children and trying to design with them running around at my feet, and trying to work from home. Like I want to be able to prove that working women and mothers can actually design too, because I feel like everyone that I admire and love has no children, and so I feel like in 5 years I see that, but I don't see me ever working for anyone else ever again. I like being in my house pants and yeah, house pants and my own. I don't like sharing my pot of coffee. It's my own. So that's where I see myself. I know it's not like a grand plan, but I really like it being just me. So
I was going to just say that I have a couple of clients who I really enjoy, and they've asked me a couple of times, like, what if we just paid you for 100% of your time? And then I'm like, what about all the other stuff I have going on? But I really enjoy working with them. So some of them, I am actually thinking, like, maybe one day, not tomorrow or not next year, but maybe one day it could turn into a relationship where they hire me on if it's a really cool opportunity.
Good question. I don't think I could ever work for anybody again. I was asked by an old client when they were ready to bring somebody in-house if I was interested in the job, and I thanked them and said no thank you, and they said, we thought you might say that, so then they hired me to recruit somebody for them, and I've done that twice now, but I don't think I could work for somebody else again. It would have to be a pretty special situation. As far as if you're talking about like long-term financial planning and stuff, still trying to figure that out.
Daniel, do you have thoughts?
I guess it's entirely possible to work with somebody depending on the opportunity, but at this point, I'm pretty happy with the freelance lifestyle. I mean, I'm still 26. I got time before I can settle down, so I can be a cowboy for a little bit longer.
Yeah. You want to restate your NDA question?
But yeah, I was just curious what everyone's take is on kind of NDA, especially if you're creative and if you've worked in any kind of environments or arrangements that didn't allow you to share work.
I can speak to that. I actually had one large project that I was working on with a colleague, and the client knew about it because it involved some specialty knowledge and skills, and it went to some sensitive information, and the assumed and general don't talk about this stuff went to a very specific, you must sign this legal NDA document, and so must your contractor. And we signed it, and it was no problem. And then there was another client who, in the course of having worked with them for 4 years, I had slightly updated my standard agreement, and when I sent it over to her, there's a clause in it, which hadn't changed from the first agreement, that says if I need to, subcontract with somebody, that I reserve the right to do that. And suddenly, this time, she actually read the contract and said, "Oh no, we hire you. You can only be the one to work on our stuff." And I was like, okay. So I took that part of the language out in order for her to have no problems with the contract. That's the only client that has ever had a problem with that. And so it's not quite an NDA, but it's sort of with what you were specifically asking, it seemed like that might be an appropriate example. So when I have subcontractors work on things, I have a kind of a small group of people that I work with, so it's always a very, we have an understanding. I'm a little bit more loose with my subcontractors than I am with my clients, actually, which I should say probably is shame on me.
Carolyn?
I trust them.
I've signed several. A lot of times, I usually get the NDA when a company's wanting me to bid on a project, but I need the materials so I can review them to see the scope of the project and blah blah. And that's when they're like, "Okay, but you have to sign this." But my contract always states in it that I reserve the right to use the work that I've designed for them as self-promotion, to put on my website, etc. And I've never had one client have a problem with it, actually. So.
We definitely sign NDAs all the time.
Yeah.
Another question.
In the beginning, do you know how to price your services or to pay subcontractors? How do you know?
Such a good
That's
question.
a really good question.
My strategy was always to aim as expensive as I could declare with a straight face, but I'll hand over. And seriously, I think that's sometimes the hardest part, especially when you first come out. You're like, $3,000? But yeah, I think you gotta go balls out and just put, because honestly, especially if you're going to negotiate, which people often will, to give a price you're excited about to get the price you're content with.
So it's basically about how much you should. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, always go as high as you can, but you never know what's gonna happen. Like just actually today, I got an email that said I made a proposal for a client that I didn't even know if I really wanted to work for yet. Made the proposal. He wrote me back. He said, "Yeah, all this checks out great. We'll get it signed and sent back to you today, but at a 20% discount." I'm like. He didn't even explain why he wanted 20% less. He just said that's what it's going to be. So, you never. Most times, I feel like people will get back to you and say what they want if you went too high.
One thing I will note is that being on the agency side, when I ask, so I will describe the project, and when I ask them how much a contractor they think it's worth, they will almost always underbid what I was intending to pay. So if I come, and I often will, especially with Dan, like we've worked together a million times, and I will say, I have $6,000 to get this done. Are you interested? But when it's someone with whom I don't have that kind of relationship, and I will describe the project and ask what their, and it's informal at this stance. It's a phone call. I'm telling them what we need, the timeline. I'm saying, how much is this for you? And they almost always will underbid what I actually have budgeted for. So I would say, don't go under.
Yeah, I always start a conversation with, what is your budget?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I think for the most part, designers have a tendency to undervalue their work, their time, their worth, and what the product is. I mean, this is a business. Even though we enjoy what we do, if you're making a living at it, you have to make a living at it. You have to charge enough. And it hurts the entire profession if we don't charge enough. So there was an interesting discussion on the DC Designers Face Group page yesterday, where I actually respectfully disagreed with Peter on a few items
always do.
regarding pricing. And so what I decided when I started my business, I'm not going to tell you what I charge right now, which when I'm in your position in the audience, I'm always like, how come they never say what they charge? Actually, you're not really supposed to say what you charge because the U.S. government looks at that as price fixing. You can talk about ranges. There are sources out there for ranges. The Graphic Artists Guild gives ranges in their Pricing and Ethical Guidelines handbook. When I was freelancing, and by freelancing, I mean moonlighting, when I had a full-time job and I did moonlighting at night and on the weekends to make extra money, I charged $65 an hour because my free time was worth a lot of money. When I started my business, it was higher than that, a lot higher than that. In fact, it was the same hourly rate that the company that I worked for was charging. Because I'm now a company. It's a business. Don't undervalue your work. It hurts all of us.
Sensible.
But on the other hand, if you're freelancing or subcontracting for a company who is reselling your work, they've got the client, they're coming to you with the work, they're billing the end client, they're dealing with the end client doing the project management. Of course you're going to get paid less than if you were the top line. So, that makes sense.
That.
Pardon?
I can promise you that.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So there's a range, If I go to an agency and I say, hey, I'm a little slow, do you need an extra hand? I'm not going to be expecting to make the rate that I charge an end client,
Right.
And I also, sometimes I might charge a certain client or a certain project a little less.
We have 7 minutes.
Sorry.
Carolyn, you want to take a swing?
I don't like this answer question.
Okay. Do you want to just skip it?
I want to skip it.
Skip it. Next
Skip it.
question.
Next question.
We got one.
Another follow-up question to that. I work full-time and do freelance editorial work, and I've now been doing it for a number of years and have been able to see clients over and over again. How do you revise your rates over time? Because I feel I've gotten better, I've done bigger projects, I think I'm more valuable than even when I started. And it hasn't been a problem so far, but I felt weird about it, being like, hey, now I charge 70 an hour. So how do you go about that and handle that?
That's actually how the conversation on the DC Facebook page, DC Designers Facebook page started. I had not raised my rates in 5 years or whatever. So from 2006 to the beginning of 2012, I had the same rate because it was a good rate. You know, it was a high rate. I mean, you can't raise your rates every year. That looks tacky. So at the beginning of 2012, I sent an email to my clients one by one on a case-by-case basis as new projects came up. And I started off with first of all, I would like to say thank you. You've been a great client. I've really appreciated working with you. I've enjoyed the work that we've done together. You know, you stroke them. And it's true. You know, it was heartfelt. And then I talked about the new, that I've revised the contract, what the terms were that were affected, how it affected them. And then I said, by the way, I've increased my rate this amount. You know, it's not a huge amount. It's not like I doubled it or anything. I said, so you're going to see a slight increase. You know what response I got back? I got back, thank you for sending this. We love working with you.
Yeah.
Great. No problem. Clients don't mind for the most part.
Hit us, Jill.
I was just going to say, too, I mean, I think it's commonplace in business that as years go on, you gain experience.
Yeah,
so
I totally agree.
You deserve to be paid for that experience. So, I mean, and if they know that you're currently moonlighting, if you will, right now, and then you're going full time, I think they understand, too, like, they know they were getting you for a good rate. She's working on the weekend. She has a full-time job. I don't need to worry about that. But if you're going to go out on your own, just give them a heads up and say, I have so much stuff. I'm going to take this out on my own, and my rates are going to increase because I'm starting my own business now. So it's a different mentality.
4 minutes. Sir.
Have you ever had a patch when you've not had work, and how did you sustain yourself during that time, especially during a recession or financial crisis? Have you ever been through that, and what was that?
Yeah, I definitely have. And you panic and you freak out.
Do you want to restate the question?
Oh, sorry. He was asking if we ever gone through a bad patch where we're struggling to have work and it's the recession and you start to think, oh my God, I'm never going to get out of this. I've definitely gone through several of them. My husband owns his own business and he has too. And somehow, when I'm in a funk and it's not happening for me, he seems to be doing better. Or when he's having a slow time, sometimes I'm better. But yeah, you panic. But that fear is such a great motivator. Because when you're terrified and you're sweating and you're not sleeping, all of a sudden you start reaching out to people, rapid firing emails to people. Hey, it's been a while since I heard from you. Wanted to see if you needed any more work. Hey, how's it going? Following up with these people. It's amazing when you're terrified how productive you will be.
Let's hit, we have 3 minutes. Let's do one more question.
Always market, too. You have to always be marketing yourself. Use the time to learn something new. And I like to do cash flow in different stages. Deposit up front, billing during the project, and then final payment at the end. I'm going through a little bit of a slow patch right now. I just got a check in the mail yesterday for a project that ended, a month ago. So
That's great. That's perfect.
Another.
There's lots of questions.
Questions? Where? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. One of you.
Have any of you ever ran into any legal issues with non-compete clauses? I guess
I-
if you're working full-time and
I'm completely barred in all capacity from making any money from anything having to do with design, marketing, anything. So I am currently in the midst of non-compete. Please.
No, I lucked out. My first big client when I started my business was actually sort of a client of my old job, but not ever directly. They were a partner, and luckily they were not an actual client of my old job because they've been my biggest client right out of the gate. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't had any problem. I actually do design for 2 different local theaters, but I have such a great relationship with them. I said, you know, I'm going to be a terrible designer if I do the same work for you that I do and do the same work for them. Like, that's not going to be good for me. Like, I want you guys to be marketed as completely different. And they were totally great with it, but they needed to be assured. And so I think I've lucked out in that sense.
One more, 2 minutes. Red left up. Say it one more time. How do you screen clients? Is the question. How do you decide whether basically they're legit enough to pay you once you've done the work? Yeah.
I don't start work until I get a signed contract, and I get a 1/3 deposit up front if it's a big project. And if it's a smallish project, I get 50%. So
What she said.
I get money up front.
Yep.
50% up front is great. We always did that.
I don't really do any. I mean, I get a signed contract, but I don't ever ask for money up front because I bill on a monthly basis because my projects take 2 to 3 years. So I don't really have to worry about it usually. Unless I am due to somebody else, then I'll make sure I get the money up front.
If they're not serious, if they're serious, they give money. If they're not serious, they don't give money.
One last question. Who's got it? You already got one. Up top. Project Tools. Maybe a Basecamp. Any Basecamp users? I kind of hate that program.
I tried Basecamp with a colleague. I didn't like it.
I don't like it.
I hate
just
Basecamp.
Me too.
phone, email.
Hate it.
It really depends on the client. Sometimes Basecamp's awesome
Yep.
for the client, but I mean, we never use Basecamp between me and Dax, so it really depends if they need that structure.
I have to say, with one of my clients, we have a Google Doc that we share as far as here's what's due and here it is, and then it's this organic breathing thing that I have so many projects I do for them. I'm on retainer for them, and so we have a sort of a color code system of here are the new things, here are the things that are done, here are the upcoming things, and it's something I can constantly check, and that's how we can sort of keep in check with each other because I don't work in their office, but it makes me feel like I'm right there sitting next to her. So I find it very
Totally.
helpful.
I send PDFs of like the project schedule and stuff like that.
And I think we have run out of time here. So that concludes Freelance Warfare. Come
Thanks,
talk to the
everyone,
freelancers.
for coming.
Oh, yeah. Anne's going to tell you about something while I run up to the top.
It's a work in progress yet, but I started a spring pad of some freelance resources. So, and I'm going to be adding to it, and I'm happy to, if anybody has any suggestions, to add to it as well. So if you want to find it, you can find it on my Twitter. I tweeted it earlier today, but if you go to, what is it, Ann Likes Red? What is it? Everything is Ann Likes Red with me. But on my Twitter is the link to the spring pad, and spring pad is like a notebook that I made public with resources for freelance. So feel free.